It's wonderful to see you. I'm Jen Cheatham, a faculty member here at HGSE, co-chair of the Public Education Leadership Project, and thrilled to be talking with this panel of practitioners today. Can we give them a round of applause and welcome them? We have not only our in-person audience, but an audience that is listening in online. I want to welcome you all to this particular panel. We're going to have a conversation with 3 school district practitioners who are taking on climate action directly at the local level. We're going to try to get into the how of this work and not just the what. But let me tell you who we have here today. So first, we have Ben Mackey. He's a board member for the Dallas Independent School District, which serves 145,000 students in 233 school buildings. In 2020, the Dallas School Board adopted an environment and climate resolution and a related committee to bring that resolution to life. We also have Dr. Monica Goldson, who is the Chief Executive Officer for Prince George's County Public Schools, which serves 132,000 students in 209 school buildings. In 2021, the school board voted on a resolution declaring a set of climate action goals and has since adopted a climate action plan. And we are very lucky to have Leanne Kittle here, who is the Director of Sustainability for Denver Public Schools, which serves 89,000 students in 205 school buildings. Their board passed a policy focused on climate action earlier in 2022 and are currently working on creating a new sustainability management plan while continuing the work of the district's sustainability team, which is what she leads. I do want to acknowledge that Dr. Alex Marrero, superintendent in Denver, was supposed to be with us. He's not feeling well. I hope he recovers soon. But we're thrilled to have Leanne here in his place. Very lucky to have the person who does this work day in and day out every single day. So I want to just very quickly acknowledge some of the dean's opening comments. The challenges are many, and this is indeed an existential problem that brings us all together. But in schools, low air quality, unsafe drinking water, diesel-fueled buses, underinvestment in school buildings, food waste, right? The list goes on. We have major challenges that only we are responsible, right? We're very well situated to address. Today, we want to have a frank conversation about how to initiate and grow efforts to advance climate action, given how well-positioned schools are to make a difference. We want to talk about the actions these practitioners are taking that are the most promising, the impact they hope to have, and their advice about how to get started. We have a glorious 60 minutes together, so we're going to dive right in.
All right.
To the first question. Okay. As I mentioned, this is the challenge of our time. Why is it important for you as a school district leader to take action on climate change? I want you to think about why is this work important to you personally? And in addition to that, how were your efforts initiated? Monica, I'd love to start with you.
Okay, let's start with me. So why is this so important to me?
Yeah.
One, as an educator, we always want to do something that's better and prepare our environments for our children. We want the best for them. That's just innate in us. And as I looked at all the problems that we faced in terms of climate change, I felt completely overwhelmed. And you add on top of everything else that we experience as a school district, I knew that in order to really create a better environment for students, we were going to have to stop talking about it and actually do something about it. And during the pandemic, we have this motto, never let a good crisis go to waste. And our board, one of our board members said, you know, while we're still in this pandemic and trying to figure things out, I have a leader of a climate parent group in our county called Climate Parents for Prince George's, and representatives from the Sierra Club that want to come together and create a task force so that we can begin to research what we can do about climate change. You have a lot on your plate. There's no way you're getting ready to convene this group real quick to do anything. Why don't I begin that process? And I will be completely honest, I was relieved.
I bet.
Because I felt like I had so many other things that I had to address. And this was a priority. I just couldn't find the time in the 24 hours in the day to execute it. And so these three groups of people came together and created a panel of 22 that included students as well. And that is how our climate change action plan was birthed.
I love this idea that I just want to say back something that I think I heard you say, that sometimes we're not acting because we're not interested or we don't think it's important, but we just simply have too many things that we need to make progress on simultaneously.
Exactly.
So having partners who can help share the burden and move the work forward is important. And you had this particular group that initiated the plan. I love that. Ben, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with the why this is important for school systems. And I've been in school systems all my career. I was a teacher, I was a principal, I was assistant superintendent, and now I serve on the school board. And at every level, and I'm sure if you talk to any adult or student or general and ask them, why do we have schools? They will give you some variation on, we want to make sure our kids are able to thrive in the future, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
That's great, and that is what we should be doing. But we also have a responsibility to make sure they have a world to thrive in. I think about what Laura said about we can have the best education system in the world, but if we don't actually take care of the world, they're not going to be able to do anything with that. So we cannot abdicate our responsibility as school systems in this process. And throughout my career, and why this is important to me, I mean, I remember taking a class in college about where the environmental sustainability crisis at the time. And now I look back 10, 15, 20 years later, nothing's changed, frankly, except we're farther down the path. And it was really interesting in my time as a principal, hearing from students and what they're passionate about. This is top of mind.
Yeah.
And so often we as a system can lose sight of what students are feeling. And I think where you're going to have a system that truly educates kids, you're helping their reality that they see match what they're experiencing in the schools. And in Dallas, so when I came on the school board in 2019, there was already underway a student movement. They were showing up to school board meetings. They were talking about the need for this and the desire. It was not from one school or one class. It was high school and middle school students from across the district showing up over and over and over and saying, here is what we expect of you. And it took that persistence to then motivate into action. And so based on that, we were able to author and get forward to the board an environmental and sustainability climate justice resolution. And that resolution not only recognized the need for this in our system, our responsibility in this, but also, the equity implications of climate justice. When you look at Dallas and you overlay where our census tracts are for income, when you put on top of that our achievement in schools, it's almost perfect. You map that over federal redlining or state redlining in the 30s and 40s, and those maps are the same.
Yeah.
And then you map asthma rates right on top of that, and it is the same. It is all the same issue with the same roots. And the students know that this is not news to students. And so it is incumbent on us. So this resolution not only set the need for it, but it also mandated that the school district work with community members and appointees and the administration to come up with and really dive into this, not just set some arbitrary goals and let's go, but dive into 6 different elements of the work, whether it's construction, curriculum, food service, purchasing, energy, and come up with recommendations and goals, and for the board to consider and eventually adopt those goals. And so that's how this work started getting going in Dallas ISD.
I really appreciate this emphasis on students, and they did their homework, right? They're pointing out the historical roots of the inequities of climate impact in your community, which is phenomenal. Leanne, how about you?
Yeah, I have a very similar story. So we had 30 students across 8 different schools throughout our district during a pandemic, during a time they didn't even know each other, to come together and urge our leadership to take climate action. And if you really think about that, really put yourself as a high schooler. This is after class, this is after soccer practice, this is after debate class or debate team.
Right.
This is after dinner with mom and dad, brothers and sisters. They met on a consistent basis for a year and a half to urge our leadership to pass a climate policy. And I actually want to read our policy because I think it speaks to how holistic they view the issue from an environmental justice perspective as well. So we passed it in April of this year. I want to give a shout out to those students because it took a year and a half for them to get that adopted by our Board of Education. And it reads as DPS shall be a national leader in establishing an organizational culture anchored in sustainability, climate action, and environmental justice in both the conservation of natural resources and in minimizing the carbon footprint of our district's practices.
Oh, that's great.
Can we have a round of applause for these?
Yes. Right? The persistence of young people. Leanne, you were going to say something else.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, and so for me, I actually meet with these students every Wednesday for the last year and a half. I hear their climate anxiety is real. They are nervous because wildfires in Denver are happening in their backyard. Shorter winters are happening in their backyard. Some of the world's worst air quality last summer in Denver in their backyard. So climate anxiety is a real thing for them. And for me, and the work that I do at Denver Public Schools, is how do we change the narrative? We want to get away from, this catastrophizing of climate action or climate anxiety and all of these words that give worry and anxiety to these students, but change that narrative to one of action, one of innovation, one of accountability. And so my job, I see, is truly just changing the narrative for these students so that it doesn't feel like a faraway goal, but something that they can do right here, right now.
That's beautiful. I want to get deeper into this conversation about the how. We talked about how the work was initiated. Clearly something that you're all passionate about, but initiated by students, by community members who care about the health of their community and our world. But getting it started is one thing. Keeping it going is entirely different. And I want to talk about what you're doing as a system to drive ongoing change. So in other words, what has been especially important about the process that you've used to center climate action and to continue to work on it? Resolutions get passed by boards all the time. Yep. You know this. Yes. It makes you feel really good for a few minutes.
They go on a shelf.
And then they go on a shelf and things go back to normal, right? So how do you sustain the work and keep it moving forward? Ben, do you want to start?
Yeah, so I think you're absolutely right about that. And so often we talk about it high level, and there is a difference when your vision doesn't match your execution.
Yeah.
And so in Dallas, I think what has been absolutely critical to seeing tangible improvements is buy-in. While this was led by students, it wasn't just the board saying we're going to pass a policy now and that'll be that, and now they'll go through it, because a policy is only in the governance aspect of things. It doesn't change how we manage, how we write procurement bids, how we do all these other things, and that's not necessarily the school board's role to nitpick every single one of those. That's why we've got administration. We've got to work in partnership. And so what this resolution laid out was an explicit demand for a group to meet, a collaborative group. It involved community members, experts, and administration, very importantly. And so they had to say, the maintenance director had to say every step of the way about what could work and what couldn't work. And so from all of this, the 6 areas we hit were construction, maintenance, curriculum, energy, food service, and transportation. And there was, over the course of a year, it was supposed to be 6 months, but it actually is so much to dig into. It took a year to really flesh out what could be, goals. I think tangible goals are a critical component in monitoring progress to them. And B, a variety of different specific tangible things we could do. Some of which were regulatory, some of which were management, some of which were policy, some of which were budgeting. And then we reviewed that. After the completion of that was the deliverable. This committee presented to the entire school board and the superintendent, here is what we're recommending in every single one of these areas. And from that, you had buy-in from everyone. The staff is on board with it. Students are on board with it. The community is on board with it. They understand and see the vision. The board sees that. And then it's a lot easier to sustain and move the work forward. So I think that was really important. And I'll talk about, I think later on, we'll probably talk about the specifics of those effective practices. But that was the process, to really do it in collaboration and to be specific about the outcomes and giving time and ability to buy in around those specifics.
And there was teeth, right? The committee had some teeth because it was a board-appointed committee, it sounds like?
It was partially. So board appointed some community members, but we also had experts that were brought in by administration and the administration themselves.
Yeah. And who facilitated it? Sorry, I'm really getting into the weeds because I want our listeners to know who facilitated it.
So in that case, it was jointly done by myself as a board member and the administration representative.
Love it. Love it. Monica, how about you? Tell us about the process.
So I think something that Ben said was really key. If you listen to his 6 areas, those areas are systemic focus. Those really weren't school building driven. So I have over 200 school buildings. I have 135 schools that already have been identified by the state of Maryland for being green school identified. So we were doing things in our school while central office and adults were going on with their regular everyday behavior and acting like only recycling was their contribution to climate change. And so it really took the creation of our action plan to come back to what are we doing systemically. So we have 8 priorities. We have 58 action items that really lay the groundwork. So we call it our roadmap. And a part of that process is that I lead that work because I believe that what gets monitored gets done. So my organization, our school district, knows this must be super important to her because she leads the meeting every month. I have a team of 40 employees within our school district who meet with me to go through, and they're assigned very specific action items. I'm on an action item myself. So those priorities, those 8 priorities, we call them subcommittees, they meet before we come back together as a whole group. So that sends a message to the organization. It's not going anywhere.
Sure does.
We're all part of the change, and we have to change adult habits. Our children are so far along and ready to move us forward. It's us.
Yes.
And we have to own that it's us, and we have to do something different. And so we meet once a month. We have what we call a rolling agenda that lists what action steps we took. But because I'm the one leading it, I believe that people aren't just going to put anything willy-nilly in the block. And I am known to read everything that comes in front of me. And so I don't allow people to come back the next month and say, ditto, a continuation of what I wrote the previous month. The template is wiped clean. You have to put in new action items. So what did you do from the last month to this month that's different?
I love how hands-on you are. My goodness. But can I ask you a follow-up question? My understanding is that your climate action plan, this work that you monitor as closely as you just described, is very much aligned with your district's strategic plan.
It is.
And in addition to that, this is amazing, it set the standard for your community, and now the county has decided to create their own action plan, sort of following in the school district's footsteps. Can you say a little bit more about that?
So it's so important. You said it before. A lot of times we will create policies or documents and they'll go on a shelf. And we'll just say, yay, we did it. Laura, you'd be proud to know your action plan is actually on my desk, not on a shelf. But we knew that in order to make sure that there was complete buy-in within our district, we had to connect it to our strategic plan, which we also did during the pandemic. Because we realized we had an audience who would pay attention to everything that we were saying, and we used that time to get community input through surveys and have meetings virtually to help drive our strategic plan. But the other part of it is that I am the largest employer in our school district. So I have 20,000 employees that I employ for Prince George's County Public Schools. So if I can change the mindset and actions of those 20,000 employees, I'm also changing the carbon footprint for the district. So that then caused our county to say, wait a minute, we've got to align our actions with yours, because if not, we're being counterproductive. We're fighting against what it is you're trying to accomplish.
And I also just have to share my appreciation for the fact that You didn't have the bandwidth to personally initiate this work, right? You shared your leadership with others. But then when you were ready, you stepped in very powerfully, right, to take a central role.
I think you said it was key. It's not that it wasn't something that was super important to me and that I knew we needed to do. It was just that I have so many things on my plate.
Right.
And that I need a team. If anyone ever believes that a superintendent does it by themselves, they are completely wrong. Mm-hmm. There is a team of people. And in this case, I think it's so powerful how we spoke about board members and leadership help to drive the vision in the district. You can't do it alone. There has to be a partnership between your Board of Education and your administration to really push the work forward.
I love that we have a board member, right, CEO, administrator, and the person who's responsible, again, full-time for the sustainability work in Denver. Can you talk a little bit about your take on
Sure. It's really hard not to clap each time a panelist speaks, so I'm just sitting here giddy. But yes, we really approached it with 5 main things. We have a climate action plan, which is very similar. We have 6 frameworks within that action plan, which is built environment, transportation, resource management, wellness, career and curriculum, and engagement and environmental justice. So with that plan, we have 3 what I call North Star goals. Those are 2050 goals, but this is a 5-year plan. So the intent there is always keep our eye on the prize with these 2050 goals, but recognize that you have to have year-over-year strategies, and you can't look too far ahead because then it gets overwhelming and you feel like you can't actually move the needle. So this plan's for the next 5 years. Then the next thing that we did is where sustainability is placed in the organization, I think is crucial. So my team, we used to be under facilities, which was where most sustainability starts off because it starts off as energy management. It has grown to be much more across the entire district in all aspects to be more than just utilities. But that was the foundation and needed to be there in the beginning. It's now recently moved to be under what we call strategic operations. So still on the operational side, but we have a lot more connection to the academic side now. So where it's placed is incredibly important. We also hired a grant writer because our panelists before had talked about how important it is to take advantage of these federal, state, and local dollars. Well, I'm not a grant writer, and we don't necessarily have capacity to have grants specific for sustainability. So we have hired a grant writer to help us with take advantage of those incentives. The other piece is website, and communication's huge, marketing's huge, branding's huge. You have to be able to communicate these things, and some of them are very complex things that you're trying to communicate. So how do you engage students, teachers, staff members in what you're doing with climate action so that it isn't something that just sits on a shelf, but you're actually engaging the community. So website, I'm really excited in the next 2 months we'll have our launch of a brand new website. But then the last piece I wanted to keep, because I do feel like this may be one of the more imperative pieces to our approach at least, is a financial impact assessment. So we've hired an engineering firm to help us. How do we get there? How do we do this? How much is it going to actually cost to electrify our buildings and our fleet? How do we do that? And so that financial impact assessment is very complementary to our climate action plan. And so then when we go forward to our district leadership, we can say, this is how much we're going to move the needle if we do these strategies towards our 2050 goals, and this is what it's going to cost, and this is what we need to essentially communicate to our stakeholders of what it's going to take to get there.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd love to just call out something that I think is just under the surface, but is so important, is that there's not one person in a system that will do this, and you kind of touched on this. And so you heard 3 different perspectives on what it takes, but if you've got a person in the district who is doing this work day to day, if the superintendent doesn't see the value in it or puts that as a secondary thing, that work's not going to go anywhere. If the superintendent is trying to do this themselves, that is not sustainable.
Correct.
And if you don't have a board that knows its lane and able to support the superintendent and the system in that, it doesn't work. And finally, if you have a board member who's trying to do this work themselves, even though that's not their job, that just causes entire mess and confusion. And so I think it is really important to recognize that you need a coalition to move this work forward in a sustainable way. And the members of that coalition have to know and be okay with their own individual roles. I think you look across the country, you see school boards that oftentimes get out of the governance lane that they are set for. Most of the times, people don't even know what governance necessarily looks like or is. And when you look at the organizational theory and research behind it, it's about setting the vision and monitoring progress in a lot of ways. And so in Dallas, we set the vision with the goals in conjunction with administration, and we do the other thing to the teeth is every year on Earth Day, actually that month, we always have a progress monitoring about our goals.
Excellent.
We don't do the work ourselves. I'm not there in our sustainability manager's office being like, what are you doing about this? What are you doing about that? And it can't work that way. And so it does take this coalition that knows their roles and their lanes and can work in conjunction with one another.
Excellent point.
And I just want to add to what Leanne just said, it's key to have that dashboard piece. So we're working to have a data dashboard because people need to publicly see what you're doing and how well you're moving towards your goal. But our students need to see it as well because their actions contribute to the data that's in that dashboard. So whether it's energy conservation, waste consumption, it's really being able to track that progress and more importantly, the savings. I think that was brought up in the previous panel. We already have a request for proposal out so that we can get a company who can help us monitor, maintain, and track our use of energy.
Excellent.
Yeah, if I could add to that, it's also being vested in your own school. So as administrators, they're not paying the utility bills. The district's paying the utility bills. At least that's how it works at Denver Public Schools. How do we get them engaged in their actual carbon footprint and recognize how some of their practices are impacting the natural environment with that built environment? And so being able to communicate with them and get them personally vested, I think, is really how you move the needle from a behavioral perspective.
I'm so glad you brought up more than accountability and monitoring mechanisms, but communication routines. When I went on the Denver website, I was thrilled to see your annual report. I mean, it was not only beautiful and easy to read, but it got me motivated and excited. And part of what I'm thinking about is how you not only communicate, but keep this feeling of urgency. Can you say a little bit about that? How do you continue to, because there's always that spark in the beginning, right? The students were feeling the urgency and helped you feel the urgency. But how do you keep people feeling the urgency and motivation to keep going beyond accountability? Yeah.
I think you get the students to be involved in that process.
Yeah.
So they're the ones that created the why. As you see, 3 examples here, students have been part of the why. So getting them involved in that climate action planning. For an example, we have a district leadership presentation on the 1st that we will present our climate action plan goals so that they hopefully can give us the thumbs up and we can publish in December. But the students are coming and presenting. I actually had to get parental, agreements so that they can miss a class or 2 to come and present to district leadership. So I think that's going to show the sense of urgency because they're front and center and part of the real world experience of the implementation. And I really wanted the students to be involved in that implementation because it's easy. I say easy. It took them 1.5 years and it was a lot of work. But to get to that policy piece, but where the rubber meets the road is actually implementing that policy. So that sense of urgency comes from continuing to have the students involved, at least from my perspective. So
yeah, I'm going to agree that the sense of urgency does come from our students. But for them, it's because they see their time in the school district is short.
Yeah.
And they want to see change now. So they want to be able to say, I saw this happen before I graduated, and I had a part in seeing that happen. So whenever I visit a school, they'll stop me. Where are we with food? I just saw somebody put fruit in the trash can. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. So they're constantly pushing us to change our behavior. And I don't think that will stop. Then the other part of it is that as a leader of a school district, if you've done any research around the longevity of a superintendent, our tenure is short.
Yeah.
So I always have a sense of urgency because my days are numbered. And so I want to be able to make sure that there's sustainability beyond me.
Yeah.
So that's key. Those 40 people that I meet with every month, they're not at the top of the food chain. They're in the middle part of the organization. no matter who sits at the top, they're going to still be there. And they're going to continue this work long after I'm gone.
I would add it and take this a different direction too, is that I actually believe, we talked a little bit about like monitoring and accountability and checking progress. I think that does inspire people to stay engaged.
Yeah.
And I think about anyone that's ever played a sport knows that if you play whatever sport with a scoreboard versus playing one, we're not going to keep score at all. There's a very big difference between the motivation of people. No matter what sport, no matter who you're talking about, what ages, it doesn't matter. The scoreboard matters because it tells you where you are, and people want to be a part of something that they're building to that is bigger than themselves.
That's true.
To see the progress and go,
Yes.
dang. And so I think about, to your point about, principals I was a principal. I didn't think once about the energy consumption in my building. I just thought about, I always get complaints about how hot it is. Just open the windows. Don't worry about what happens later on. To see and change behavior, now Dallas ISD shows the energy usage by buildings to principals. And there are ways that, hey, if your energy usage is going down, the money we save, we're going to roll that into your budget next time. Because that's money that would be going to education anyways. The question is whether it just goes out the window, literally, or you can use it for something that you find more valuable.
Excellent.
And all of a sudden, as the principal, I can see the scoreboard, I'm paying attention to it, and there's a benefit to kids on my campus for doing it. I think there are little low-hanging fruit that are really powerful movers of adult behavior because adults want to be part of something bigger than themselves.
Progress is motivating.
Yes. I was going to say competition, but whatever.
And that.
But I would agree, like engaging the adults as much as the students as well. But I'll leave it there, actually. But it's a really great point that it takes the entire community to be engaged.
Okay. I'm letting us stay in this conversation about process because the strategies mean nothing if we can't get people to take them up, right? And so I just want to stay in it for a minute or two longer because you mentioned principals, and we've talked about mid-level staff, CEO, board, students, right? The kind of grassroots element, community. But I want to stay on the role of teachers and principals, school-based staff. Can you say a little bit about how you've motivated, you gave one great example just now, Ben, school-based staff to take up this work?
So gardens is a great way because it's very easy to incorporate curriculum and get the students outside, have that physical experience. It also helps with behavioral issues and just like a litany of benefits to gardens. So we have 120 gardens that we manage across our district. And that, I heard wow, that's good. It is a lot. And we have one person managing that. Hats off to you, Chris. But also we're working on curriculum development. So it can be plug and play. I think the first panel talked about how do teachers teach this when they aren't necessarily climate scientists themselves? And so we're developing curriculum to really be a plug and play for teachers, and then they can tailor it as such. But I think supporting them in this endeavor is incredibly important as well.
Yeah. So for our 135 schools that have been identified by the state of Maryland as green schools, they have to demonstrate one, that it's embedded in their curriculum and that they've been able to execute the strategies that are in their curriculum that yield a benefit to the school environment. So that's been key. They apply every 4 years. So you can't just say, oh, I'm doing this and never come back to it.
Okay.
And then we also go and monitor. So our educators are leading the work in the classroom. We too have gardens, not as many as you have, so clearly we need to get moving. But even in our high schools, we've had students who've grown their garden and have then used those foods to create a salad bar. Which our students are saying initially when they came and say, hey, we want to talk to you about food in our cafeteria, I really just thought they'd get ready to ask for Chick-fil-A. But that was not what they came to me to say. They were like, we need some healthy options. These are not, the options that we have are not working for us. We don't want pizza every day. And so it caused us to really look at what we were offering and to find fresh options for our students. And so while we were well ahead of the game pre-pandemic, we've got to go back to where we were because that slowed our progress down.
Okay. Any additional thoughts from you on school-based staff? And then I want to get into these specific strategies.
No, I echo what they said. I don't think I have too much more to add there, except for, and I'm thinking of, I think it was Laura again who mentioned this, or something along these lines. But I think about, we have a lot of, we see school generally as a place where students come to learn so that they can go off and do. And that, I think, is wrong. And it should be a place where you learn and are empowered to act and just continue this cycle. And what we see when students are not engaged is it might be because the reality in school doesn't match the reality out in the world. And so how are you not only just teaching students about accurate information about the climate, environmental, and sustainability, et cetera, how are you helping them know what channels they can go through and fostering them to go and act upon this and go and say, we're going to go talk to our school board? And I think about what would happen at any of our school districts if there was a consistent group of even a fraction, 100 students that showed up at every school board meeting saying, this is what we're rallying around and we want to see differently in our schools. I bet you would see a ton of action.
Yeah.
And I think, how do we foster students to not only learn, but also act in the moment and not just wait when you graduate, then you can act.
I love that thought about student activism and how we want to nurture it. Okay, one more question on this subject. Okay. I'm so sorry. Let's talk about resistance. I'm just curious. How does it show up? Does it show up on this particular subject? And how do you think about it?
Oh, yeah, it always does. If you think that in any environment, everyone is 100% on the bandwagon, you're sorely mistaken. A great example would be we just finished contract negotiations and the leader of one of our unions said, hey, I need 10,000 copies of the contract. No, we're not giving you 10,000 copies. It's posted on the website. Go to the website. We refuse to be a contributor to us not wanting to change our own habits. And so we have to push back. When you find that people are very complacent in their own actions, you push back. You have to call it out. A simple board meeting where I saw water bottles sitting on the counter. Hey, didn't I give you all reusable bottles as a gift? Let's pull those out, people, before we cut that camera on. So you have to start with small things, but you have to, if you say nothing, you're perpetuating the continued actions that are never going to get you to where you need to be. And it's those small things that will eventually get you to where you need to be by all of our targets of 2040. We want to be in a better environment by 2040. I want my own children to live in a better environment. I want the 131,000 kids that I support every day to be in a better environment. And I don't want to be the reason why they can't be.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
So resistance is real, but I think it's not as prevalent as it used to be, at least in the 15 years that I've been in sustainability within education. It's definitely not as prevalent. I will say, though, as a public institution, when you're responsible for taxpayer dollars and there's optics involved, how do you create an environment that's comfortable with innovation and don't have a fear of failure? And that, I think, is probably the core reason for resistance is I don't want to fail. I don't want to be the reason this doesn't work. Yeah. I mean, you could easily talk about budget or other things that come up for resistance, and those are real challenges. But at the end of the day, how do you create an environment that allows for innovation, for things to maybe not work?
Right.
Thomas Edison, right? I think it was like 99 times before he got it to work.
Thank you for sharing that.
I think the resistance that I've seen in both these veins is one of either two things. One, it's from a financial purpose and a lot of misunderstanding about how much this costs and what it could save you on the back end. So I think there's a big clarity on helping understand that. We said Dallas ISD moved towards a fully renewable energy contract. There's big reaction to that. How are we going to cost too much? It's going to be X, Y, and Z. And then we said, and it'll save us $1 million a year. Okay. And so then it quieted it really quickly.
Yeah.
And I think some of those like that is a very easy one-to-one to try to attack that. Some of them are more difficult. We talk about the construction, and maybe it did work in Arlington, Virginia, where we have a net zero school that was done at no cost. if you get bids on it, though, and you do see differences in cost, it changes the dynamic. So how are we really helping propagate meaningful, real information in a centralized way to help sense make for different contexts about how much it actually costs and how much can it save over the long term? You're only considering construction costs. You should also consider maintenance costs or lifetime costs. So I think the finance one is one resistance that I think takes strategy and communication for. The other one, and the biggest one, it's not even individuals, it's just organizational inertia. We've had that policy for 12 years. Why am I going to look to change it? Because if I look to change it, then everyone's going to want to add something, and it's just going to be chaos, and we're going to have to do things differently. And that's where it goes. And I think about some of the effective practices that we've put in place and just how low-hanging they are. Literally, just putting in our construction documents that white roofs will be painted on buildings instead of black roofs because they reflect more sunlight and have a big impact. That's just changing a word in a construction document, but it has a huge impact. I think about, we just had a line that all future energy contracts will be renewable.
So do we.
Cool. Then it's just as hard to change them back, too. So then you make the organizational inertia reward the behavior that's most important.
Beautiful. I mean, there's a political realm here, right, which we've been touching on that I just wanted to lift up, right? The communication, coalition building, celebrating, kind of small wins. Were you going to say something else, Monica? And then I want to move on.
I was going to add, the resistance is really an opportunity to educate.
Yeah.
And so we're having these conversations every day in our work environment. We're talking now about turf fields. Several years ago, we were implementing turf fields, and now it's come to a complete halt. And so I have coaches and players who are like, wait, when are we going to get our turf field? You're not. And let's talk about what the impact, what we were doing to our environment, what we were doing to you by installing it, and why we can't move forward. And really educating to show that, now that we know better, we have to do better. And I think for our students, for adults to admit that we were going about this wrong allows them to see that sometimes we make mistakes.
Yeah.
We don't know it all.
We're learning.
And we're learning as well.
So let's get into some of the strategies, some of the ones that you think are most promising, that you'd like to see your own district or other districts begin to pick up. Leanne, do you want to get us started?
Well, I think this will answer that question, but
I know you wanted to get in there.
I'm sorry, I was trying to follow up on something you had touched on, Ben. So we as a district are still defining this. So what I'm about to say again is in the process. But triple bottom line, that economic, environmental, and social is incredibly important when it comes to capital improvement projects, and so, or planning rather. So we're talking, and again, this is in progress here, talking about social cost of carbon, talking about emissions, first cost versus life cycle cost analysis, and also end of life planning. What happens to like furniture at a school, for an example? We get a new principal, they want all brand new furniture. What are we going to do with the furniture that's now going, to the landfill? So end of life planning is also incredibly important, but how do we changing that narrative? How do we change the narrative of capital improvement planning so that it's not just first cost? Recognizing that that's always going to be a challenge, especially in K-12. Even with the federal incentives, it's still going to be an issue for us. So it's not that first cost isn't going to be part of the criteria, but how do we have a holistic view of these capital improvement planning by including environmental and social as well?
Thank you for that. Anybody else want to chime in on specific strategies that are promising, working, need to be scaled? What do you think?
I'll go. Definitely, the Build to Learn Act has lots of funding around infrastructure, around transportation.
Yeah.
And I'm sure all of the districts here have applied for electric school buses. I have over 1,000 bus routes. Blessed to be able to get 5, but we're going to need to scale that up a little bit faster.
Yeah.
Because if I'm just getting 5 buses a year, we would have all fallen off the face of the earth by the time I get enough buses. It's just reality. We've started to put in electric charging stations at our central office locations. We've been very specific around putting priority parking spaces at schools for hybrid any electric cars, to encourage just a small thing. Teachers, you don't have to walk that far if you have a hybrid car. You can park right up front. Right. Those small things help us. We've started with technology use. We are a one-to-one school district now, thanks to the pandemic. But now we also have students who are repairing our devices for us. Instead of contributing to just saying, hey, we're just going to buy some more, they are fixing those devices for us, and we're paying them to do that in the summer and after school. For our furniture that breaks, we are refurbishing that furniture ourselves for our students in our CTE program. Awesome. And we have a CTE Grow Your Own program where I have students who are working alongside our electricians, carpentry, paint shop, so that when they graduate, I can hire them back as employees in our school district. So they're helping us to go back and refurbish those items. We've put in water fountains in all of our schools so that students can bring in their water bottles so that they can refill their water bottles themselves and not ask, hey, can I get a bottle of water from somewhere? So we're starting those small steps, but our students are seeing those actions and are beginning to at least appreciate that we've heard them and that we're starting to move that way. In our elementary schools, we have small baskets at the exits of schools. When they come out for lunch, if they don't eat that fruit, they're to put it in that basket. That basket is then placed at the front of the school door at the conclusion of school for students to take with them if they want to take it home or need fruit on their ride home. We're moving towards the middle and high to do the same. So we're taking those steps so that our students are helping to drive that work, but we're changing our actions as well.
It sounds like a culture shift.
It is a big culture
shift. It's
not
any one strategy, but many together that represent a larger kind of point of view.
And you have to start where you can see measurable change.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have over 200 school buildings, but in offices, you include those as 233. But literally changing it where there's no motion in the room, that the light goes out. So sometimes we could be on Zoom and the room will go dark on someone. Yay! That's a good sign.
That's a good thing.
That's a good sign. That means it's working. So we're starting those kinds of actions to change.
I love it. Ben, you've got some good news to share.
Yes. So we, like all the other districts, we applied for the grant, and we just were awarded 25 electric school buses from the EPA.
I'm going to take some of yours.
So I'm excited about that. And I don't have a ton of other little snippets. I think they hit on a lot of snippets of things you can do. And it's not just one of them. It's doing all of them, doing them consistently and thinking that way. But going off of this grant for school buses, like that in and of itself isn't going to necessarily change it. And I want to take this, I think the pandemic really highlighted something about schools. So what happens when school when the pandemic happened and school shut down in the same manner? All of a sudden, school districts became responsible for closing the digital divide. You realize how many kids and families school districts sustain, things that fall outside this realm of direct education, but nevertheless fall on the school district. I think in the same way we see, when we talk about city management and police forces, police are generally asked to be mental health professionals or all these other things, or we would hope that they are. They're the ones that have to solve those problems. And I think what this highlights is we have to think differently about how we collaborate to actually put the resources in the place they need to be and actually move towards these outcomes. So I think about this school bus grant. That's great that we have school buses. And part of that is Dallas ISD is now going to be able to help start thinking about the infrastructure for how do we sustain it? How do we charge them? Where's that energy coming from? All this type of stuff. Dallas ISD shouldn't do this alone. So now this gives us a leg to talk to our local transit system, DART, our city, who is starting this process as well, and say, how are we collaborating to get to some of these root causes? Similarly, I think one big unique thing that Dallas ISD did recently, we passed a large bond, $3.5 billion in 2020, to really modernize all of our buildings over the next decade. Wow. Part of it included this thing called joint project funding, which was funding specifically earmarked for capital-esque projects that would be done in conjunction with another partner, a community college, DART, the city, the county, et cetera. And I think about that because that money has been able to leverage other entities who, funding is always the question. Well, we can't be the only ones that pay for this. But now we have that money to say, hey, DART, if you all will go in on us with an electric charging station that we can both use as we go in this, we've got some funds, you've got some funds.
Yeah.
One way that it's actually started to happen now is one of our policy changes we made was to identify for all schools, 30% canopy cover would be our goal. And that had never been a part of our conversation, so we planted whatever we happened to plant at that time, and it just was what it was. And so now we're thinking differently about trees and parks, et cetera, around our schools. And this money was allowed us to partner with a couple nonprofit entities to actually turn our playgrounds, redo our playgrounds to improve them, but hit the canopy cover goal and turn it into a joint city park. So during the school day, you can lock the outside gate, it becomes a playground. Then when you leave school, you unlock the outside gate, lock the inside gate, and now it's a park.
Yes.
And so that is a way that you are getting partnership to this work. And I think that is the only way we're going to solve. School districts alone can take some steps, but if we're truly trying to solve this, it takes changing behavior in a community with all the entities engaged.
Yeah, go ahead, Leanne.
I swear I want to clap every time.
I know, me too.
Clap every time.
Brilliant.
So similar to that, we have, so Denver Public Schools has collaborated with the city and county of Denver. They have a $40 million climate action fund where they just recently put in their first community solar. It will be one of 11. We will be a host site, and so we don't own it or maintain it. We're just hosting it. And so DPS as a district, we receive a portion of that energy generated at a guaranteed lower rate. And then what's really awesome about this project is that throughout all 11 community solar gardens, about 30% of that power generated will go specifically to DPS families in need through utility assistance program. And then additionally, we have another pot of gold, if you will, that we're working with the city on to install solar shade structures in outdoor classrooms to really show the students how solar works, because more often than not, it's on a roof. You have no connection to it. Even if you see a dashboard, which is really great as well, you still don't actually see a solar panel to feel and understand what that means. And so we're going to have solar shades so that students and the surrounding community really understands what renewable energy is. And so
I love it.
I have a litany of other examples, but I thought that community piece was worth touching on as well.
I so appreciate that. I mean, throughout the conversation, we've touched on so many different strategies, right? About food and gardens and renewable energy. I mean, curriculum. There are so many ways to work toward climate action, and it's never one strategy, but many in combination. Ultimately, about culture and cultural change. So we have to wrap it up. I knew this time was going to fly by. So I want to do one final speed round, and I'm going to ask each of you to share two things. One is give us a glimpse of what success would look like for you, right, in 1 to 3 to 5 years. But what do you hope will be true in the near future? And then secondly, any last words of wisdom, advice for those who want to begin the work of climate action in school systems? But those two things. Anybody want to start? What do you hope to be true? What's your advice?
I might have to ask the second question again, but the first one, do you want to go first?
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm next.
My hope is that in the first year, students are involved in the climate action plan, in the development of it, knowing what it takes to actually implement a policy. And 3 years from now, I hope that they are outside of the built environment and into the natural environment, meaning in gardens or seeing what solar canopies look like or EV charging, and actually learning about science, math, art, all of the subjects right there on their campus. And then in 5 years, I hope they're out in the real world changing the landscape of our nation, which is a big task, but they're up for it.
And what's your advice for people who want to get started?
Create a strategic plan and stick to it. It is incredibly difficult when you have so many organizations who are wanting to work with you, so many partners and ideas and community members who think this is the focus we should have or that's the focus we should have. Create a 3 to 5 year plan, stick to it, and then also a financial impact assessment to understand financially how do you do that. But don't deviate. You certainly can have strategies year over year that can change, that we consider a working document, but don't allow the goals to change, because as soon as you do, you end up not really moving the needle towards those 2050 goals.
Love it. Monica, how about you?
1 year, first year
Nice,
goal
nice.
would be to, we're planning to execute a Ready Climate Leadership Summit this summer. And the sessions will be facilitated by students, administrators and leaders in our school district, and community members. One, trying to give strategies for everyone in our community that they can utilize both at home, in their work environments, and to support us in the school environment. 3 years, I would like every single employee, 20,000 of them, to be able to vocally identify at least 3 strategies that they are using to support our climate action plan, which means that they would have had to have read it and be able to execute at least 3 of those strategies. That's where true sustainability will come from. And then in 5 years, I'm believing that for our school district, we will be able to track our progress over those past couple of years through a data dashboard. We'll have the opportunity to demonstrate that we've had some financial savings and that we've been able to redirect those savings back into the classroom.
Love it. What's your advice for people who want to get started?
Don't hesitate. I know that it seems to be extremely hard to do, but there's so many resources. The Aspen Institute is a great place to start, but act now. You can, if you think that, oh, I can do this next fall, it's too late. We're already behind the 8 ball. So you can do it. All you have to do is partner with just a few more people. And we've all said students will help to provide that sense of urgency and direction for you, but you have to act. You have to do it now.
Thank you. Ben, how about you?
So I think for what I hope to see in 1 and 5 years, and I'm going to take this from a more political, social standpoint. Number 1 is monitoring progress and seeing progress on the goals that we've set. Boards, organizations, they love to do a strategic plan. They love to set goals because it shows we've done something. Then it falls off immediately. And we say we're doing it, but we don't quantitatively measure, are we making progress or not? And the reason is generally politics. We don't want to show that we're not making progress. And that's hard. That reflects poorly on me. And I think we should throw that out. It shouldn't reflect poorly because that's what also breeds distrust in the system. And parents say, you set those goals about reading or whatever, and then you don't show us if our kids are learning. I know they're not. I can't figure out where the ball is. And so I think we have to hold ourselves accountable for monitoring progress and looking at the reality of the system, ugly or not, and just taking that not as a personal reflection on the superintendent or someone else, but saying, how are we all implicated in this? And then how do we mobilize the resources if we said that's important to make progress on it? So that's my big hope for the shorter term, that we actually can build those systems to monitor progress and do it in a way that's not punitive. The second bigger thing is in 5 years, I would really love to see, especially I'll take Dallas specifically, collaboration on these things between large bureaucratic government entities being just how we do business rather than just a headache of red tape. Like, we should see each other as partners in a way to leverage what we're trying to do and not just, it's going to be a lot of work to try to move this forward. So that's what I hope to see. And my feedback for someone getting involved, it's around getting involved. But I think more than that is to be persistent without being pushy and be an ally in it. And I think I can think of a lot of people, and actually, no, I can't, because school board members, I represent hundreds of thousands of people that live in my district, millions across the Metroplex. I don't get a ton of emails. Not a lot of school board members do. You can have a loud voice just by simply engaging. And when I do get emails, usually it's about, I want this, and that's a real reason. That's great. We should listen to that and engage with that. But what's really powerful, especially for something systemic like this, is say, I want to be an ally. Here's what's important to me. I have ideas. I can engage people. What's important to you? If the values align, then how do you help partner with that school board member to move it forward? And if you can do that in a way, you will see the action happen a lot faster. And we're seeing in national politics, school boards are starting to take front and center stage because they wield so much power. I think about Dallas. I think it was 2011. School board elections were canceled because there were no one challenged the incumbents. This board controls $2 billion in public funding, and it's just not getting a ton of engagement. So engage in those ways.
Run for school board. That's what I'm
true.
hearing.
Yeah, there you
Run
go.
for school board. We need more school board members like you. Thank you for that. Everyone, thank you for your time, your wisdom, your commitment to climate action. It means a lot to me personally. I feel very inspired by the work that you're doing. Keep doing it. I think our school districts could become models for climate action if we work together. Everyone, can we give this wonderful panel a round of applause?
Thank you.
Thank you.